Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Council of St. Michael. We are happy that you are joining us once again on this beautiful October 8th, 2025. I am the host, Rick Barrett, the Armed Papist, founder of thearmedpapist.com. First class firearm training with a foundation of Catholic tradition, because the two are compatible, is my nice little tagline. And I'm joined once again by members of the council, Angel, Trad, and Joey. And we have a interesting, I think it's going to be a very interesting show for you all tonight. In addition to some current event stuff, we're going to talk about lawful self-defense, because there's a lot of misnomers when it comes to the idea of self-defense, because a lot of people, when they get nervous about buying a firearm, they buy a firearm and then they kind of just, my joke is, they put it in the nightstand and that's it. They don't do anything else with it. They don't do background, and they hear things from like YouTubers or their hunting buddy or a FUD, heaven forbid, that, hey man, you just stand your ground state and all these other kinds of stuff. And then there's not a lot of, they don't know about the intricacies that there is within a lawful self-defense incident and what happens in those situations and how you need to react in that. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun tonight. We got, a very good show for you lined up. So let's see here. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Glad to have you all with us. While people are kind of filtering in before we get to the main topic, first of all, Angel will go in order. Angel, Trad, and Joey, how are we doing tonight?
We're doing great, outstanding. Too blessed to be stressed. Looking forward to talking about the self-defense and the escalation of force and how many different types of self-defense there are. Right? There's a lot to it, but I'll hand it over to Trad or Joey.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. No, Rick, thanks again for having me and having us on here, and excited for this show. And now I think the real world application of what firearm ownership means, right? And for a lot of people, it can be hunting, but for us here and for a lot of people, it's going to be self-defense. And, you're carrying a firearm to protect your stuff and protect your loved ones. So hopefully we can get into the weeds about what that means and how you can effectively apply that.
Hey everybody, Joey Olivo, come to you from the DFW Metroplex. I'm really excited about this show. This is a show that there's probably gonna be a lot talked about tonight that you thought you knew, but you thought you knew incorrectly. And there have been some recent events here lately that we can kind of highlight. I have an event that was shared with me here over the weekend from a parish that was kind of an interesting incident. It has caused us to make adjustments in our personal parish and what we're doing. I'm excited to talk about this. This is going to be a good show.
As always, guys, with you guys here, it's going to be fantastic. So as now that we're waiting for others to kind of filter in, let's talk about something that happened over the weekend. I think Joey might be talking about this. We'll talk about the incident that happened on Monday of this week. I don't know what it is, but so this kind of just in the crazy thing, gentlemen, is that it came and it went with essentially not being talked about, which doesn't really shock me. No, we don't want to see this face. Let's see here. We have it was in Washington, D.C. of all places. And it's a story. No, please don't put my face on screen. But it's a story that is dealing with the escalation of left-wing violence and how churches are becoming more and more. You gonna work for me, Restream, or are we just we're gonna do this? We're gonna do this little dance all night. Probably gonna do this little dance all night, but it is what it is. So this story comes to us from the Catholic Standard. Whenever it decides to actually work, man arrested outside of a cathedral found to have explosives. Now, is this what you were talking about, Joey?
This is one of another one, and then plus one more that I know of from a firsthand source.
So we'll talk about this one quickly, as I think Restream's just like, you're done tonight, buddy. But this idea was, it happened on Monday, so we might as well bring us all back. It happened on Monday, and it was before this thing called the Red Mass, which is the reason it's called that, celebrated the Cardinal in Washington, D.C. On October 5th, outside of St. Matthew's Cathedral, just hours before the start of the annual Red Mass, had a fully functional area of explosives that he threatened to detonate. Now, this is just another example of the increasing use of force that the left is more than happy to use against us Catholics. We're not getting that story. Okay, buddy, whatever. Restream, I'll talk to you later. But the idea is that DC Metropolitan Police, Louis Jerry, who's a 41-year-old resident of New Jersey, so he drove down from DC, but it's the East Coast, so it's not that far. They discovered he had multiple suspicious items, including vials of liquid and possible fireworks inside this tent that he just put up at the steps of the cathedral. Now, this is a pretty noticeable thing because a lot of masses, I know Joey and Trad, you guys go to masses inside major metropolitan areas. I don't know what Angel's situation is. Sometimes I don't go into major metropolitan areas for but major metropolitan areas, they are rampant, whether it's Austin, Fort Worth, Dallas, any major metropolitan area out there, with homelessness. And the response by city officials has been to allow them to kind of set up shop wherever they want. And so you have these homeless people that are all over the place, and it allows people like this Louis Jerry to set up shop. And the reason he was there is because he was targeting Supreme Court the members of the Supreme Court. Like, if this guy had not been caught, and I'll swing this into what we're going to talk out, and I'll throw it to you guys with the question. Who knows the absolute chaos this man could have thrown the entire union into if he was even halfway successful. And he only got caught because it was a major metropolitan area with a major mass, right? It was the Red Mass, so security was hyped because the SCOTUS, the judges were there and members were there. If somebody wants to set this up in a place like Wichita or in a place like South Dakota, you're not going to be able to rely on the security presence of law enforcement for something like that. So it kind of just heightens. And I'll throw it to Joey first, because this is Joey's specialty, is the whole church security and SOP type thing. But when you read this story, Joey, what came to your mind?
Yeah, I mean that was a crazy one. This actually, we put this into a chat group that a bunch of guys, and it was you get a lot of different responses. I'm part of several different little chat groups of safety team guys, and stories like this. And another story, there was the guy that the Florida story. Remember that one, Rick, with the guy that went into this and he's claimed that he had a bomb.
Oh, yep. I remember you dropped that one. Yeah.
I mean, that's a crazy thing. And I always say, don't focus on these one-off chances of something bad happening. But my first thing is, again, being proactive on your safety teams. And I'll tell you a story. A parish that I know, a gentleman walked in this past Sunday, was wearing tactical / hiking gear. He had sunglasses on. On his sunglasses, he had comms. He was communicating with somebody through his sunglasses.
Oh no!
On the side, and walks in. He has a big backpack, a heavy duty backpack, and the safety team guy that was working in the main vestibule there looked at him, and kind of sized him up a little bit, scanning his waistline, see if anything was printing at all, because he was wearing a t-shirt. And he went ahead and approached him, because he was just kind of staring off onto I guess there was like a bunch of pamphlets and stuff that were there. He just kind of staring at him. So walks up, asks him, hey, welcome to the parish, first time here? Yes. And tells him, like, hey, in totality of recent events, we're going to ask that if we could place your bag into a separate building. Oh, I'm getting some feedback there. Sorry about that. Is that me? I'm sorry. Is that me?
I don't. I'll figure it out. You keep going. That's
okay.
I got it while you guys are working.
Yeah. So they end up. The guy complies, goes into the chapel, sits on one side of the chapel, and then there was 2 additional safety team guys that observed him actually communicating with another gentleman on the opposite side. So they were doing, like, from what I was told, like hand signals, little nodding back and forth. And luckily the guys were proactive. They got the officer that was on site. There was a uniformed officer in a unit, let him know the situation. He said, that's weird. Let's kind of keep an eye on it. And because they were proactive, after mass was over, there was a guy that kind of followed him at a distance, and they just acted very strange. Everything was so weird that even the police officer was like, that was a phenomenal catch. That was weird. You guys, is what he told me, like, you guys probably were being scouted right now to test what you guys are. What are you guys, a hard target or a soft target? And so again, being proactive is going to stop stories like this. It can still end badly for maybe a couple of individuals, but for the parish as a whole, you can prevent something catastrophic from happening. I mean, again, these were fireworks. Fireworks start fires. Mm-hmm. And we saw what happened with the LDS church up north. That whole entire parish burned down. Yeah. So being proactive is going to be absolutely paramount. I mean, if you're going to have a safety team, you need to have guys that are not going to be afraid to approach people and engage with them and talk with them, in a calm manner. You don't have to be aggressive. You need to be friendly, cordial, professional. But you do need to have the safety of your parish at the forefront of what you're doing. That's our mission, and because of that policy, that parish changed their bag protocol. Obviously, purses, obvious diaper bags, that's fine. But with regards to backpacks, heavy duty backpacks, or even just backpacks in general, we're going to ask hey, do you mind if we take a look? If we don't know you, if you've been a long time parishioner, been there for 10 years, we're probably not going to ask anything. But, if you're visiting from out of town, I mean, here at our parish, we're right next to DFW Airport. Mm-hmm. We've had people in town for the weekend. They go into mass on Sunday and then they fly out right after mass. We secure those bags as far away from the general population as we can. Now we're going to be doing backpacks as well.
And I think it rises, and Angel and Trad, if you have anything, please feel free to jump in. It rises back to something we talked about, and I think in our first show, which is we need to not be afraid as men of our parishes to be rude. Now, I know Joey said that you don't want to do it in a rude manner, but most people are going to, well, can I secure your bag? Well, why do you need to do that? And things like that. They're going to come off. They're going to take it as rude most of the time, even if you're being completely nice about it, because, oh, there's a church and all are welcome. What do you mean you need my bags and all these other kinds of things? And it's like, well, here we do. And I think Joey had there was that example he had where the guy you questioned the guy when he was leaving and he got a call from the bishop or whatever the case may be after that. So
yep.
We're seeing 2 things here. Everybody's focused on lone wolves, active mass casualty events via firearms. Obviously, it's something that we need to pay attention to. The things are shifting here. Things are shifting here to other devices. The battlefield will adapt in this regard. And also, most of the enemy, they have gun clubs, they have things like that. Most of those guys don't want to use that kind of stuff, or they can't get access to that kind of stuff for one reason or another. If they have charges, they have felonies, or whatever the case may be. So you can ask ChatGPT to do things. I'll say that's as far as I'll go, so I don't get the show booted off. But you can ask.
Yeah, Rick. Before we even go further into this, let us go ahead and do a disclaimer that we are not attorneys, we are not trained, we're not bar certified or anything like that. We're not giving you official legal advice. We're just giving you our opinions.
Yep.
And Rick being a CCW for USCCA instructor, certified weapons instructor for USCCA. I mean, obviously he has probably more knowledge on this than most of it. I mean, I've read up on it because, again, I do this every single Sunday, just about volunteering at the parish. So yeah, I want to be familiar with the laws as well. So
yep, exactly. So my funny disclaimer when I start my classes is not a lawyer, not a paralegal. Best I can give you is about 1,000 hours of Law and Order SVU that I've watched over my lifetime. But outside of that, I can't really help you legally. So that's kind of the case there. But yeah, Phoebe says never thought of that, and that's what they're counting on. They're counting on the fact that we're only going to focus on one aspect. But as Joey says, if you have a good plan, a good SOP in place, it should be able to cover a multitude of scenarios. So I think the time is short on the fact that we talked about it last week. This era of insurgency that I believe that we are in, not full blown domestic disturbance, but people trying to make names and statements, especially against Catholic institutions and Christian institutions, in the light of what happened to Charlie Kirk and all these other things that have pushed it back into the spotlight. So, for a while, when Joey and myself, we were doing this for years in different ways, and I know there's a couple other people that have been doing it. People kind of were just like, "Oh, that's cute that you want to do that." Now it's like, hey, the headline after headline is showing that the time is now. So I don't know if Angel or Trad has anything to add about that before we move on.
I'll jump in real quick here. No, that story was eye catching to be sure, and not even no major headline that I saw from any of the major news corporations or anything like that. You had to really be paying attention to the stuff to even hear about this story. But it happened at the Red Mass, the Cathedral of St. Matthew in D.C. And I want to touch here real quickly. This kind of shows to what Joy was talking about in the prior episode, rings of security, because this guy had over 200 handmade explosive devices, according to, I think, Washington Post has some article in the one you have pulled up there. Over 200 devices, right, that he was intending to use outside the cathedral, and he was approached by, I think, one of the police officers standing outside the cathedral. He was on the steps of the cathedral, but having the outer perimeter, that ring of security, like Joy mentioned prior, that's just one way in which you can kind of mitigate threats before they go into the cathedral, before they start engaging in these mass casualty events. Is a super scary scenario, because I mean, we've talked about it. And I've always, prepared for the situation of the lone gunman, preparing for, a firearm or whatnot. But we've seen here recently, vehicles have been used. The LDS, the LDS Church, a vehicle was used as part of the entry into the church and part of that destruction. Here we have explosive devices being used, right? So they're getting. It's getting worse out there. It's getting rough out there, to say the least. And so, having good SOPs in place, thank God that this didn't escalate, this didn't become, a larger tragedy than it could have been. But we have to always be vigilant, be super vigilant about shady characters, people who stick out, people who are not your regulars. You'll have a gut reaction, you'll have a gut level sense of, okay, is this guy, is he giving off good vibes here? Is he kind of acting shady? And more times than not, trusting your gut and hey, approaching this individual, being confident, being a bulwark, not being passive and not being, oh well, I don't want to hurt this guy's feelings, or oh, I don't want there to be a misunderstanding here. No, understand that you're going to approach them cordially, tactfully, like Joy was saying, being a professional, of course, but understand that you are the bulwark, right? If you're on a security team, if you're on a safety team, you're the bulwark that is going to stop these threats from escalating, right? So taking your role seriously in that regard, and in this situation, that story there, approaching this individual, and he clearly was not in his right mind, and so thank God it wasn't worse. But yeah, it goes to show you have to be vigilant. You got to always be, keep your head on a swivel and keep an eye out for shady characters.
Angel, I don't know if you have anything you want to, anything else you want to put to this.
Yeah. You were saying earlier you don't know where I attend mass, but like in my parish, I go to a cathedral um, near the city here where I live. I live in a rural area, but I commute to a cathedral in downtown, and it's across the street from a university. And there's about maybe 500-600 people at our mass at one given time. In our situation, there's no way, even with these new changes that the pastor implemented, they have like door guardians, they call them. They just have people standing there keeping an eye out who's coming in and out. Nothing really crazy. The parish priest doesn't want, the pastor doesn't want anybody like armed. He doesn't want anything of that nature. I mean, obviously, if you're within the law and you're armed, you can be armed in there, right? But um, there's just so many people, like, there's so many incidents that constantly happen there. People stealing the Eucharist. Uh, they can't catch them all. And even me, where we sit, like I can only really kind of be aware of my area where I'm at, because the church is so large. I there's just no way to keep tabs on everything. Um, there was an incident where they actually set that altar on fire. Um, and they had to redo it. Someone actually broke into the church and did it. So, and no one was able to predict that. It was like a random act of violence. But, the story Joy was talking about the suspicious individuals. I mean, if you know everyone that attends in your community and you know everyone and it's a smaller community, that's a lot easier. But it's not always the case, right? In our case, it's nearly impossible to keep tabs on everybody in there because, you have, it's mainly students. Um, so you can imagine how many people, like parents coming to visit, people traveling, exchange students, a lot of foreigners here. So it's it's a mixed bag. We just need to keep our heads on a swivel and just act appropriately, right?
You bring up a great point, Angel. Most of us attend the Latin rite, right? And for some of us, myself, sounds like Angel, we have to make commutes to them, and I'm sure Joey and Trad have to deal with this too. You're dealing with people that are coming in from all over the place. So there's a lot of people coming in, like Joey said. Sometimes when my wife and I are out of town, we try to look for a Latin mass to go to, right? So we go to that and whatever the case may be. So it's actually, in some sense, for the Latin community, even more of an imperative to keep an eye on your regulars and to keep an eye on newbies. Like Angel said, sometimes, all Angel can do is kind of keep to his sector.
That's it.
any new people in this area, that looks weird, and you got to count and you got to hope that people are in the other places doing the same thing. So it's very, for the people that are really dealing with, for lack of a better term, a diverse population, because it's not the neighborhood.
Yep.
Right? Your local NO probably doesn't have to, I mean, they should keep their head on a swivel, but somebody who shows up there for the first time is going to stick out like a sore thumb because they're used to it. For us, it's kind of like, oh well, I go to the Baylor one. Like this time of year, they have people from Arizona State, people from Utah, people who are flying in for the Big 12 games, and then maybe they'll stay and go to mass after. So there's a whole different can of worms that certain parishes have to take a look into. And obviously the cathedral tourist areas have to deal with this kind of stuff as well. So that's another thing you need to build into your planning at this point.
Yeah, and if I can just jump back in here real quick, I would appeal to the pastors out there, if there are any priests out there watching, is we need to really hit more sermons on the dignity of dressing for mass. Put on your wedding garment, as they say. That makes my job really easy. Like it really simplifies my job, because when somebody comes in, I'll tell you this: 9 times out of 10, when I've had somebody that's going to cause issues, they are dressed a certain way. They don't look Catholic. They don't act Catholic. They are dressed a certain way. And by the community. Again, being in a TLM community, everybody dresses very modest. It's it just and again, if you're wearing the right clothing, I mean, it's kind of harder to conceal. Like if you're coming in to do something bad, you know, it's harder to conceal something like that in nice clothes. In my opinion. In my opinion, I can pick it out. I don't know, I have that much experience now where it's going to be harder to do that. You're going to want to wear something overly sized, overly big, to conceal what you may have on your person. So there's clue number one. So even if they do try to blend in, well, if they're wearing a suit jacket that's 3-4 sizes too big, well, there's clue number one. But it also at the same time, if you come in dressed in tactical gear, you're gonna stick out like a sore thumb. And before we get into the meat and potatoes, I want to throw this out to the chat here. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, where I know Rick's going to talk a lot, probably do most of the talking on the legal aspects of things. I want to go over the one in Florida, and I want to ask you guys to put in the chat group what would you do? Man walks into the church. He has a bag. He causes a disruption. He claims that the bag has a bomb. He then claims and produces a cell phone that is now making some sort of a countdown noise. You're on a safety team. What do? Me and Rick were part of a safety team where we have a bunch of guys in there that are leaders on safety teams, and we mulled about that for a little while, and there was a little bit of back and forth, just again, iron sharpens iron, luckily for us, we're fortunate, here we have a long-time law enforcement officer that was in there, and he kind of clarified some things for us. And so what do you guys do? And I'll leave it to you guys put it in the chat. And we'll discuss it as Rick goes into the legal aspects of the stuff.
Yeah, if anybody joins and you want to drop a question at any time, we're more than happy to just kind of stop what we're doing and answer that, because that's one of the things we're here to do. But while you guys are forming questions and think about things like that, let's as Joey said, let's get into the meat and potatoes here of tonight's topic, which is going to be this: understanding your rights, protecting yourself and your loved ones and your property and self-defense. Now we're going to use Texas law because first of all, 3 out of 4 of us are Texans. And secondly, most of your self-defense law, if you look at opencarry.com or the NRA, the only good thing about the NRA is the legal side when they talk about things like that. A lot of these things are going to be similar, at least in your red states. If you're in a blue state, good luck. I don't know what to do for you. But a lot of these things are going to be similar. And there's going to be some things that you're going to want to know before you need to build it into your self-defense scenarios, because a lot of people have this, for lack of a better term, this daydream, the scenario where somebody breaks into a house or runs into a church, and you have like the sickest draw of your life, where you draw your gun in 1.5 seconds and boom, you take the guy out, and that's it. And the heaven, the skies open up, the trumpets sound, the cops show up, they give you a high five, and then you go on your way. And unfortunately, what you need to do when you're planning this is you need to build in something I talk about with my classes. I call this a line. Everybody needs to develop a line. And the line is based on your religion, your upbringing, your moral compass, and it's a set of circumstances that need to take place in order for you to actually engage with a target, because in the state of Texas, you have no legal right to interfere in third party affairs. The state actually says, you don't have to do it. You're not obligated to do it. And I think a lot of people get their carry permit, whether it's Florida, Texas, wherever. They're like, I'm going to protect like the girl on the subway in Charlotte. Well, okay. Well, I mean, that's a great idea in theory, but are you going to be aware all these other kinds of things? So there are some things that you need to worry about or bring into account. And this is all in section 9.31 of the legal code. You have to use force against another party when you reasonably believe that force is needed to protect them, you, your family, whoever, your church, parish, against another's use of force or attempted use of illegal force. Now, the state of Texas does discriminate. Now, if anybody has anything at this point, please jump in and interrupt me. There is a difference here for Texas when it comes to justified self-defense, and then justified use of force, because they're deadly, deadly defense and regular self-defense. There's limits on that. Now, the two flow into each other very easily. It's a delicate situation. Yeah, the individual only uses a level of force that's needed to defend themselves. And I'm actually going to bring in just war theory real quick here, because in my book, The Armed Catholic, The Catholic Case for Guns and Self-Defense, which you can all find on Amazon, quick plug, I do an entire section on just war theory and how just war theory mirrors itself into the legal system. And a lot of people think, well, just war theory is, it's for countries. Now, if you believe that every man is a priest, prophet, and king, then guess what? You're the ruler of your own home. Your country is your castle. You need to use a level of force to defend themselves. You know what we call that in just war theory? Proportional cause. That's what we call that. The fact of the matter is, you must weigh. Now, I'm looking at my notes. So you got in the just war theory, you got to weigh the effect of going to war, the destruction and death, by that. So for us in our personal lives, we have to use, okay, the necessity of acting. Well, how much force can I use to actually defend myself and my family, my church, whatever the case may be? And the law is going to push you to all kinds of standards. They call it the reasonable person test. That, okay, well, did you need to use so much force? Or the proportional response argument that can be brought up. You need to use the force to stop somebody else's illegal violence. The person didn't goad or prompt another party's use of force. Let me do that one real quick. When you're in a self-defense scenario, you must not use inciting language. You cannot use inciting language in any way, shape, or form, because as we saw with the Carmelo Anthony incident, and I think we talked about it on this show, the incident in Portland, or in the Northwest with the guy in the wheelchair versus the guy who wasn't in the wheelchair. The moment you put hands on somebody, or the moment you say things like touch me and find out, punch me and find out, you don't want none of this, you've lost the actual right in a legal sense. Once again, not a lawyer, just what I've heard, of being able to use self-defense. It just doesn't work in that regard, simply because the legal line of thinking is, where this is going. You know that you have a firearm. And if this does result in an incident where you will be tested, you will bring that force. Now, before everybody just kind of droops out for me talking for 15 minutes, let's actually bring this into context. This is something that happened in Florida, and we'll actually use this. Speaking of Florida again, bringing Angels, bringing Angels State into this. What had happened is the guy in the truck apparently cut off the guy in the Mercedes. Now, the guy in the truck just kept driving, and this is actually in his subdivision. The guy in the Mercedes cuts him off of the vehicle and proceeds to approach. And if you look in his right hand here, he is approaching with a firearm. And so for a lot of people, you'll see a lot of the tough guys on X say, that's far enough for me. Gun's coming out, and I'm blasting through the window, and I'm taking the guy out. I would not advise that. I don't know. You can think about this, and if you have a question about it, drop it in the chat if you'd like. The idea here is that, yes, there is a threat that is possible, but the law also states you need to find every opportunity to get away. You need to find every opportunity to de-escalate the situation. De-escalation is a key term in the legal senses, because the court's going to take that into account. As in, well, yeah, he was walking towards you with a gun, but you could have driven away. You could have done you could have reversed. You could have done a lot of other things, especially if you're in a state that has a duty to retreat law, like Rhode Island, California, things like that. Here we have stand your ground in Texas. You have a right to be where you are present. And so this idea here, as this guy is coming out, is he's approaching the vehicle. He's obviously irritated. He's obviously angry at the person for cutting off, which, road rage is deadly in that regard. And this is where it gets spicy. Like, he wants him to get out of the car, which is also illegal. You can't order somebody to get out of a car. That's something you can't really do. But now he's coming up to the car, and now he actually will enter the car. So now you've got detainment, which you could say by putting the car in front. Now you've got assault, on top of this, now you have the second part of assault here as well. So this gentleman in the truck, which I don't know if we'll actually see it, he's actually carrying a firearm. His firearm's actually displayed the entire time, right there, if you can see it down there. But he actually amazingly keeps his cool, doesn't actually annihilate this man, which a lot of people will do. If you can look right there, guys carrying guns ready to go. But he actually demonstrates a lot of prudence is the Catholic term here. He's demonstrating a lot of prudence because this guy, he's just kind of having the gun. He hasn't pointed it up, as the case of the Daniel Penny Perry. I forget which one it was in Austin, where the AK was being pointed at the car, and so forth. So you have a bunch of things that are happening in this moment. You know, this guy is absolutely lost his temper. He's been the aggressor. He's come after you. The guy in the truck has established that he's the victim. And there's a lot of times where people will just kind of quickly say, you know, the Monday morning quarterbacks on X will say, well, I would have shot him when he got out of the car, or as soon as his hand went into the window, I would have shot him. You got to realize once those shots go off, once that gun is actually put into action, your life changes forever, you know, because this guy, even though he looks like he's the aggressor, you know, you're thinking about civil actions that can take place. And also, as Catholics, I try to tell people, if you're going to take that life, you're going to carry that soul with you for the rest of your life, even if it is a justified use of force scenario. The church said, you know, the church as previous popes and even in the catechism says, if you have the right to defend yourself, but you have to make sure that you have to take the weight of carrying that death, that action with you. And so I try to tell people you need to avoid it at all costs. And once again, credit to the guy in the truck for keeping himself calm. He's in his truck. So I don't know what the laws are in Florida, but in Texas, that's part of your property. That, you know, that's easily to defend your property, and you have the right to be there. So
Yep, that's the castle doctrine right there.
yeah, it's the castle doctrine in there. So it's very interesting that a lot of people kind of say, well, he came towards my truck and so I shot him. Okay, well, technically within the I always call it the box of the law, the statutes and everything that's there. Yeah, you probably have a very strong case. But you know, if you don't have a good legal representation, like USCCA, CCW, safe attorneys on retainer, I don't care who you have. This guy could easily say he was a threat to my life. That's why I had to pull the gun out and walk towards him. You know, because the point of a trial is not actual truth; it's victory. It's whoever's lawyer is better, because the evidence is going to be looked at the same way. So I would throw it, because I've been talking for an extended period of time right now. You know, gentlemen, your thoughts when you see a video like this of Brad and Joey.
No, for that is an amazing level of restraint by the driver there. I mean, I can't say for certain exactly what I would do in a situation like that. You know, if I have my kids in the car, if I have my wife in the passenger seat next to me, right? I see a man approaching my vehicle with brandishing a firearm, detaining me from free mobility. You know, I'm thinking, okay, this guy clearly is not in his right mind. He's clearly in such an enraged state that he's not thinking properly about the situation that he's in. So kudos to that driver. Amazing restraint. I mean, filming everything, getting the evidence so that you can show that, look, this guy's detaining me. He's brandishing a firearm. He's making threats. I mean, it reaches into the vehicle, right? Breaks that barrier, breaks that border, right, between outside and inside the vehicle there. I think, again, I'm not a lawyer, not legal advice, but just from my opinion, I think in this scenario, he would have a pretty good case for self-defense if he were to, you know, retaliate and exchange, force with this individual. Now, again, amazing restraint, and I'm glad nothing happened, but it goes to show you that sometimes restraint is the best thing you can do, right? Sometimes use of force doesn't, carrying a firearm doesn't necessarily mean you have to use it, right? If you've taken any sort of LTC course, anybody out there, Rick, I'm sure you have tons of examples of this in the courses you've taught. Just because you have a firearm doesn't mean you have to use it, right? If there's a means and a method for you to get out of a situation, to retreat, to you know get on your 2 feet and walk away. If you have the means to do that, by all means do it, because it's not just the situation doesn't end with an exchange of force. The police come and they high five you, and then you send on your way. That's not how these situations play out. We all know this. Rick, you especially know this, and then what you've laid out here. We know that these situations, in any use of force exchange, it's going to be a very long process, right? Lots of litigation, civil charges, criminal charges, depending on which state you're in, depending on which locale you're in. If you have a more liberal DA, they can throw the book at you, right? If you have a more conservative DA, perhaps not, but you may still have civil litigation, right, on the party, that was affected by this. So there's so many more facets to this than people realize. And, this is a great video of just to show you what a situation can arise and what that looks like, and how much restraint this man has. So props to this guy. I can't speak for myself. I don't know what I would do in this situation, but again, it's a scary situation. But no, you got to really think about all the factors that go into what happens after, and not a lot of people do that.
Before anybody else jumps in, what Trav was saying, there's a couple other things in just war theory that we can apply to our daily life. Reasonable chance of success. With the guy that close to your vehicle, if you are going to, let's say, theoretically exchange fire, your wife is now in the zone. She's there. And secondly, a last resort. Just an extra set of patience from this guy. Yeah, this guy's annoyed, and this guy's kind of yelling like a madman. But what does he do? He walks off. So it just that extra sense that, okay, this isn't a last resort. This guy doesn't seem like, now some people will say the guy didn't take action sooner and he put his family in jeopardy because it wouldn't have taken that long from the present and go. But the fact is, from a Catholic standpoint, if you want to use just war theory, 5 and 6 is reasonable chance of success and use of force, engaging in warfare, engaging in action. It's got to be the last reasonable and workable option for addressing this problem. And so that's a couple things that came to my mind when you were talking, Trad. So I'll let Joey and Angel get back in.
Yeah, I clearly believe that I don't know the backstory on what happened here. But Florida's full of road rage, especially on I-4, and there's a lot of road rage, and people pull guns all the time in road rage incidents here in Florida. I'm sure you can read probably about one a day. But in this specific scenario, I don't know the backstory. I don't know if these guys knew each other, if they had something that was building up, they had beef. I have no idea. But if this truly was a random act of violence by that guy in the Mercedes, I mean, you can tell that the guy pulled a gun to intimidate the other guy. He had it down. I don't think he was intending on using it. If he did, he would have shot as soon as he got out of the car. So I think his intent was to intimidate. Was it a mistake? Yes. His emotions took over, and he was completely out of control. And that's usually the most dangerous person, right? The person that's out of control, but the person that wins the encounter, someone that's in control. So I don't know what I would have done. I think I probably would have tried to de-escalate it, but that's way too close. With a firearm in your hand, finger in the trigger, for me not to react somehow. I don't know how I would have reacted with my background, but I think I would have just played it by ear. And yeah, it's in Florida. If the driver of the truck would have probably put a couple rounds in that guy, reached over, and he probably would have been justified. But like you said, it would have been a long legal battle, could have taken years. Who knows how it would have initially been justified, but that's what I have to say about it.
In the words of Taylor Marshall, yeah, but Taylor, I live in Texas. So what if you live in Texas? Most of these events that happen in urban areas, and you have to think about who the DAs, who the judges are, who your jury, your peers are going to be. You are going to be in a liberal dominated area. So you have to take that into mind. Just because you live in Florida or just because you live in Texas they're red states, it doesn't mean that you're going to get off scot-free. You have to consider that. Even though deadly force could have been authorized here, it could have been used, absolutely. I mean, this is the guy, the Castle Doctrine's there for this incident. There's reasonable, was there an immediate threat? Yes. Was it apparent? Yes. Was the defendant's belief that his life was imminent danger? He could have said yes. So, I mean, it checks the initial boxes, but you have to remember, if you get put on trial, I have a priest buddy that's from another state, and he talked about how one of his relatives had him go to a trial that he was a part of, and to see these attorneys just grill this police officer who was a sibling with, who's his brother. He was like, it blew him away. I mean, they just grilled this officer, like, do you have this? Can you demonstrate how you did that and your procedures with this? Do you have this kit? Do you even know how to use it? When was it last? I mean, you are gonna get grilled. And so again, this guy showed amazing restraint. I can't speak as to what I would have done, but I will tell you this, and this is a little bit of advice. You do not want to be inside of a vehicle and be in a shootout. You are at a disadvantage. You are at an absolute disadvantage. Well, the door's there. Go look up YouTube videos on the effectivenesses of doors against 9mm rounds. They're they're not effective
Might
unless
as
you
well
got
not
that
be
thing
there.
coated with some sort of armor on the inside of the door panel. You're gonna get shot. And on top of that, again, you brought up a good point. The guy's wife is in the car. That bullet gets deflected. Maybe it misses you, but it hits her. Your children in the car. These are all things you have to really consider. And again, you don't want to be in a car in a shootout. So the guy practiced. I mean, I think ultimately he did the right thing. The guy walked away, thankfully, and I promise you, about 20 minutes after this incident was over, he was probably sitting there going, "Oh my goodness, this is not a good look for me. It was on video. I'm probably going to get a knock on my door here soon," and I'm sure he probably did. So, I mean, these are all things that you have to, everybody would just want to say, "Oh, I'm going to shoot the guy." You really got to think things through before you start pulling the trigger.
So yeah, just a real quick, and then we'll throw it back out to you guys. When we're looking at it from a just war perspective, the just cause, if you're going to look at this from the driver's perspective, the just cause here, the proper is, look, you can freeze that frame right there. That gun is up. All right. And that's only a split second on the video. But if this guy's got any sense that he's ready to act, that's all most of us would need theoretically to get into action here. The proportional cause, you had your as we saw in the video, he had his response ready to be used. The right intention would be to get this man away from the vehicle, to get the threat away from his family. The right authority, he is the husband, he is the father if there's kids in the car, so he has the authority as the owner of the vehicle and as the patriarch of the family to defend. And in Texas and in Florida, we have laws that state, and as I say once again, the police are not obligated to protect you. It's up to you. And that's why we have self-defense law on the book. You have the authority, at least in most red states, to use self-defense if you feel your life is in immediate danger, which I'll bring up. Let's see if I can find it here. Necessity, which is this idea that, based off of the penal code, that you have the absolute right to defend yourself if the necessity pops up, which the actor reasonably believes the conduct is immediately necessary to avoiding immediate harm, and the desirability and the urgency of avoiding the harm clearly outweighs, according to ordinary standards of reasonableness, the harm sought to be prevented by the law prescribing conduct. So the necessity is there for many people. They're like, this guy, the gun is up, it's towards my family. So you have that. Then we talked about reasonable chance of success and last resort. If you actually look at videos where people shoot through windshields, the first bullet gets deflected, as to Joey's point. It doesn't go to where it's supposed to go. So if you have any other members in that car, there's a high risk that it's going to be going to them as well. So you have all these things, and and we said that before, and you're 100%. No matter the outcome, your life will be different. Work wise, life wise, it's going to be on your record unless you have good legal representation. If the man is injured or if he dies as a result of your action, even if it's a justified shooting, you're gonna have a record on that. So that's why we always want to, Vital. We want to make sure we try to de-escalate these situations. And in the moment, I'm sorry, I'll be the misogynist in the group, as I always am. In the moment, his wife's like, "You better take care of that guy," right? His wives are like, "We're in danger. You better take care of me." And say, 20 minutes later, she's like, "I'm pretty happy you didn't shoot that guy because of the ramifications and everything else." There's something that's called the adult ego state, and that is you have to be the adult in the situation, especially when you're reacting with somebody who is having such an emotional breakdown. Because you have to think about, as Joey and Trad and Angel said, the long-term and Vitals, the long-term consequences you're going to have to deal with in that regard. So, even though, I've laid out here that technically within just war theory, we can apply it to our everyday lives, we still have to, 5 and 6 are the most important ones, in my opinion, when you're talking about day-to-day carrying. Reasonable chance of success and as a last resort. Because this guy walked away. And by the way, the guy in the Mercedes did get arrested. He did. Because one other thing that is advised from legal representation is, I hope this guy in the truck, his first move was to call the local police and say, "Hey, I just had a gun pulled on me." Because what happens if the guy in the Mercedes gets in his car and said, "Hey, I just had an encounter with a guy with a gun"? Guess who's the victim in that regard? The first person to call 911. Or the first person to file a police report. Doesn't matter if he's in the right and he has the video and all that stuff. It's just an extra step that you have to deal with. So all of these things need to take into it.
Yeah, Rick, if I can jump in just real quick. The one thing you have to also consider, guys, is that yes, a DA or a grand jury may decline to indict you, but you have to remember, here in these United States, the family of whoever you shoot can file a wrongful death lawsuit against you, and you're going to have to deal with that, and that's going to cost you money. So you have to consider that as well. I mean, you have to see the state of our society. If you go and you pull up any news story, we've seen inner city violence where somebody defended themselves, and the family of the person who was committing a very violent, deadly act still will go out on the local news and be like, "They shouldn't have shot him. He wasn't going to kill him. He wasn't going to kill them," even though the guy was in the process of probably killing them. No, he shouldn't have been killed. They shouldn't have shot him. He should have fired a warning shot. We'll get into that later too. It's people have as a whole, society has lost its collective mind, and in a society on litigation, we have all these attorneys out there. Any attorney that wants to make some money, they'll be like, "Sure, I'll pick it up and go sue that guy that shot your relative. Yeah, let's sue him. We can just bankrupt them into oblivion through the legal process." These are things you have to think about.
So real quick, jumping on what Joey just said, let's say, be cognizant of where they are. They're in a neighborhood. Shots are exchanged. One of those shots doesn't go where it's supposed to go, goes into one of those houses. And let's say it hits somebody sitting on the couch watching TV, a family pet, an appliance, whatever the case may be. Those people are coming after you as well. In self-defense terms, I like to tell people there's a lawyer attached to every bullet that we use in a self-defense situation. I don't know if Trad and Joey remember this, or even Angel. There was a couple years ago, I think it was in White Settlement. There was the video of the guy who came in and he killed 2 parishioners, and then the guy from like 45 feet away, single shot, bam, took the guy out. He was a member. He was an actual security guard hired and all that stuff. He went through 2 different trials, the initial trial, and then because the shooter was a person of a different race, he went through essentially a hate crime trial. And then the guy who saved all the parishioners was sued again by 2 parishioners. He was saved by 2 parishioners in civil court for damages, trauma, all the kind of stuff that lawyers come up with. Oh, I can't hear the right angle. Oh, I have PTSD or whatever they say, because Joey's right. In any of these situations, lawyers are like cockroaches. They'll come out of the woodwork and be like, oh, you can't walk the same way anymore, can you? Oh, well, I think we can get some money for that. Or you can't hear the way. Oh, or you can't sleep anymore. Oh, I think we can do some things with that as well. And you can get dragged for anything in any way, shape, or form when it comes to civil court, because criminal, beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil, preponderance of the evidence, which is just the most whacked out standard I've ever heard in my life, because nobody understands what the preponderance of the evidence is. It's just who can make the jury cry the most, apparently, in one of these situations. So it's one of these things that you have to worry about legal and civil ramifications. And for Catholics, we have to worry about the moral justifications of having to carry that, even when it's, I'm sure, if you can talk to a priest and I'm sure they'll give you proper guidance, but you're still going to have to deal with that emotional trauma, and you're still going to have to deal with that mental weight on your shoulders the rest of your life. So for anybody that's thinking about this, especially as we're talking, we're all like, the times are terrible, you need to get a gun, but you also have to realize that there's a lot more responsibility that you have to take into account. And it's not just, using a firearm. I mean, it could be really any type of self-defense that's used out there. I know that Angel, it's what we call a setup, buddy. I'm throwing you an alley-oop here, bud. So if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we're in a society that we get so fixated on firearms, but there are so many other types of self-defense tools or situations, right? No one wants to pull a gun on someone. No one wants to, use it. I mean, some do, but I don't. um, we have it as a last resort. It's a tool that you use, right? Whether you have something like this, Grandpa's old shotgun, old Winchester Model 12 from the 40s, you're gonna go duck hunting or something, Uh, but even that is a self-defense tool. It's meant for duck hunting, but it's a field grade shotgun. But I mean, I would pick that up before I pick up almost anything else. It's got everything I need, right? But you know, uh, I'm a big advocate of knives. I love bushcraft and survival. I'm really into that. You'll see me carry all kinds of knives, everything from D2 steel, 1095 high carbon. I'm into knives. I always carry knives on me. So, if I were to be in a self defense situation where someone is close in on me, I will not pull my gun because I would not want to lose my gun and end up in someone else's hands. I will use a knife. But if it's a long distance thing, if it's something that's fast, if it's something that's lethal, yeah, a gun has its place. Um, I was in a situation once. I was working with my wife. The place of business had closed, or the hours have closed, the office. And there was a mentally deranged person in the parking lot that would not let us leave. The person was screaming, throwing things, banging on every window. Um, and I was carrying a 9mm and a knife. And I told my wife, I do not want to confront this person. I do not want to get into a brawl or a fist fight with this person. Let's go back in. Let's lock the door. Let's get in a defensive position and we can wait it out or call the police. And that's exactly what we did. And we were able to go back in the place of business. Later on, we found out the guy had a knife. So, that could have gone pretty sour for anybody, you know? Um, we called the police. They came up maybe 20 minutes later and they took him. The guy was high on meth and had an altered state of mind and had no, and was just talking and walking up to people and being crazy. So, in that scenario, my self defense was not to walk out and stand my ground and potentially shoot someone with a knife. It was, I'm gonna retreat. I'm gonna be safe, and I'm gonna let this play out because I'm in control, not that person.
That's actually
all I have.
brilliant. Yeah, that's actually the first rule of conflict is to avoid it at all costs. So let's actually get to this statement here by Vital Dragoon. You're scared to death of carrying at mass. in the case of a critical emergency, drawing or not, it's going to be bad. And you know what? You don't have to carry if you are that concerned. Nobody's obligated to this. And for me, I'm going to actually toss this down to Joey, because he's probably dealt with these situations more, either with the training that he does across the country or in his own parish. So if you want to actually address this as well, Joey.
Yeah, so I'll speak in generalities. I don't like to talk too much about my individual parish because I don't like to give away what capabilities and stuff like that. But in general terms, I always say if you're that scared, don't carry. If you're that scared, don't carry. But if you're willing to fight, I mean, you could, if you're willing to get physical with somebody if necessary, then you could still serve on in some sort of capacity on a safety team. Absolutely, because again, like I've said 1,000 times before, outside of tonight's subject, those one-off, very rare circumstances, you're going to be dealing more with medical emergencies, slips and falls, and things like that. So if you're that afraid, don't carry. If there's other guys that are carrying and they're confident, and I'll tell you this, I have walked into situations personally, and I had one just this past weekend with I'll share a personal story right now. My daughter works at a coffee shop. She's a barista at a coffee shop here not far from our home. There's times she has to go in at 4:30 in the morning, and I sit there until the second person shows up. Well, Saturday afternoon, I show up. There's a guy that's shirtless, and he is walking around like he's high and mighty in the back, and he's nothing but women in this place. So I drive around and I tell my daughter, hey, there's a weird guy back there in the back. She's like, yeah, he's making all of us uncomfortable. I was like, you guys should call a police officer. And they didn't. And she wasn't the manager's call. They didn't. And the guy ended up going inside. And I was like, yeah, I'm going in. I walk inside, and all the women are like looking at this dude. As I'm walking up, I can see all the women through the window, and they're all looking at this guy. And then I walk in, dressed almost identical to this right now, and all of their eyes turn to me, and they're like looking at me, and then they look back at the guy who's making them feel uncomfortable, like, hey, here's another man. Hey, guy, look at this guy. And I walk up, I make eye contact with him. I order a water. They hand me a water, and I just kind of lean back and I just start staring at the guy. I was looking over his direction. You could tell he was looking for problems, but the way that I carried myself forced him out. Once he saw that I wasn't backing down, I wasn't going to go anywhere, he backed down, he got his stuff, and he left. So, Vital, if you can carry yourself a certain way, you carry yourself, like, hey, don't walk around strutting around like a turkey. And I'm not saying that, but if you carry yourself like a dignified man, like a man who's not going to necessarily back down from a fight, you'll be surprised at how many, again, predators, they're going to be the way that they are until they are confronted or they see somebody who might be willing to challenge them, and you will quickly see the guy's attitude change once I walked into the room. Once I walked into the room, he went from staring hardcore to his eyes started darting around. You could tell that he got nervous after he saw that I wasn't gonna back down. My daughter was there. I don't know what he had on him, but I sure as heck wasn't going to let all those women become victims to this guy there in that bar. So I made the decision to, hey, you know what? I'm going to stick this deal out, and I hope that he backs down because I'm going to protect my daughter. And by protecting my daughter, I'm also protecting all the women that were there. And he left, and the whole situation calmed down. So if you're that scared, don't carry. You don't have to carry. But if you through a lot of training, you can gain the confidence to carry. But you need to find some good guys to hang out with and learn to shoot, become confident with your weapon. But just know, yes, when you do what we do, at mass, you are assuming risk. You're going to assume risk, but it's a risk I am willing to take. So and you have to weigh that. I think Trad, you got something to say, operator, on this?
No, for sure. I want to just jump in here. What we've all been saying, we've been talking the past few weeks about, responsible gun ownership, purchasing firearms, prepping, training, etc. Right? But all these scenarios you bring up, Joey, Angel, I mean, Rick, I'm sure you've had several scenarios from your training, and you go through scenario-based training with your classes. But most people who are caring for self-defense are not going to be preparing for end of the world. They're not going to be preparing for Red Dawn. They're preparing because the world we live in is a dangerous place. There are active and real threats out there. And like Joey was saying, that these predators that are roaming around, they're looking for victims. They're looking for people that they can victimize, right? That they can take advantage of. And I read a statistic not too long ago. I think FBI data said there's roughly 2 million self-defense related gun incidents, not gun deaths, but incidents in which a firearm was used to protect someone, right? And we don't really hear that very often in the news. It's always gun deaths and gun tragedies, etc. But you can use your firearm as a tool to protect yourself and to protect those around you, right? And so for a lot of people, and I don't want to, scare anybody here or anything like that, but if you're looking to if you're looking to be a proficient gun owner who wants to carry for self-defense, if not for yourself, for your family, etc. You have to, like Joy was saying, be confident in your ability, be a man of action, be someone who is capable, maybe perhaps not even willing, right? Because I hand to God, I pray and I continue to pray that I never have to draw my firearm for any reason. Right, I'm blessed and thankful in a lot of ways that I've never had to defend my life, right, in an extreme situation. But what this show is about and what we're trying to get across to our audience here is that, look, you need to be preparing for these situations. You need to be of the mindset that, look, you're not paranoid, but you're a steward of those around you. Okay, you are going to be a steward. You're going to be someone who can protect those around you and protect yourself in a situation where self-defense would be justified or use of force is necessary, right? Rick, what Rick was saying, just war theory directly applies to the civil space, right? It's not just war between two countries. We live in a civil society. Individuals who wage war against civil society can be treated like combatants in certain scenarios, and our legal system has, the caveats to account for that, right? But all these situations that you've all brought up, it just calls to mind for me that, look, justified self-defense and perhaps not even using the gun, because all the situations you guys brought up, you didn't have to use the firearm that you were carrying, and many times you don't have to. And I think that's a very underrated and missed point that a lot of people don't think about when they get into this space of carrying firearms, getting into self-defense, understanding the laws and the legal jurisdictions and whatnot. And they're thinking, oh, I have to use my firearm. I'm going to be the protector. Oh, that girl in the train, I would have been the one to save her, right? And that's great. Those are great thoughts. Your head's in the right place, but you have to understand that, like what Rick was saying earlier, de-escalation is key. Conflict avoidance is key. Understanding that you carry a tool that can end a life or save a life, right? And on your person, that's what a firearm is. So having the wherewithal to understand, okay, what's justified, what isn't, and understanding that there are times, and often many times, where you don't have to use that firearm to end a life. You can use it to obviously protect yourself, right? But the intention is always to, use it justly and use it in a moral manner. So great points all around. I just wanted to touch on that specifically because all these points were, none of you used that firearm that you had, but you were capable of using it. You had the training and you had the wherewithal and the restraint to not use it, to end a life, but to protect people. So there you go.
So let me just address this, Vital. If you're worried a lot about the post engagement landscape, then I encourage you to do the research. CCW Safe, USCCA, attorneys on retainer, paying the monthly fee to be a part of some kind of legal representation may give you a bit of an ease on that. Not 100%, because you'll not be able 100% ease, but it may make you feel like, okay, well, if something does, I at least have some kind of legal backing to get through the process. If that's going to happen, maybe it's the way you're also saying, and maybe you're just not afraid. You are factoring in is a better way to say it. Just the whole moral and legal and civil ramifications of it. And I don't fault you in any way, shape, or form for taking those in. I don't fault anybody for doing that. I tell people in the LTC class, listen, you might go through this whole class, get certified, and never carry a firearm your entire life because you just don't feel like it. And you know what? I don't shame you in any way, shape, or form. you're going to have to be the one that deals with that long term. So I actually think that's a really good point you're bringing up, Vital, that sometimes it's like, listen, I don't know if I can. And that's okay. That's really okay. I'd rather you be upfront with that than try to fake this whole like John Wayne, John Wick mentality of I'm going to go out and do all these other kinds of things and so forth. So I think I know Trad's he's got to bail in a couple minutes, so we'll wrap up the show a little bit early, but we do have a couple deals of the week, because we always do. And so let's get to our first one here. If I have it correctly pulled up, I don't, which is not a shock to anybody. There we go. There's our first one here. This is what do we have here, Joey?
Oh, so we have the MREs. I don't have, unfortunately, the paper that I wrote the prices down is no longer in front of me. I want to say it was like 80 something bucks, and you get quite a few. I don't, Rick, can you pull up how many that case is? I want to say it was it 48?
Let's see here. Give me 2 seconds. I'll find it.
But again, these are MREs, and I will tell you this. I lived off those things in Afghanistan for a while. They are do your research 24. On MREs, huh?
It's a pack of 24 for $79.
A pack of 24 for $79. There you go. I mean, I would stick with some of the larger, your Patriot Food Supply stuff. It's going to be better. But again, if you want some compact space to store these, they have a long shelf life on them. These are dated. They were inspected in 2025. So, I mean, they're going to be good for a good while. I mean, you can live off of them, but it's not my first preference. But it was a great deal. So if you guys want to check that out, you guys can check that out.
I also have a deal of the week here. This is actually where I get a lot of my stuff from. I like 4 Patriots. It doesn't matter. You'll find the one that you like. But this is a 300 watt solar generator for right now. It's on sale for like $399. And it may not sound like a lot, but if you're in a situation where the grid is down and you need to power just like your electronics, your basic things, you can it stores the solar panels fold up. I don't know, Angel, what you think about something like a unit like this as just like a beginner, just to have some kind of power access to it, for most people. But it's at least something you have in your house to have some kind of power generation.
Yeah, that's a must. I mean, those solar boxes with the panels are huge, especially if you live in an area like I do that we get hurricanes. We get power failures every year. A generator and gas is only going to take you so far, Once you're going to make 2 or 3 hours in a line for gas, if you're not prepared properly, that's the go-to right there. I mean, all you really need is lights and a radio to keep in touch,
Yeah.
So that's sufficient for long-term prepping, actually.
Yeah, so definitely take a look at something like that too. That's at 4 Patriots. You just go into the solar power section. They got much bigger ones if you want to get absolutely crazy with it. But if you're just looking to have like, hey, I need something so I can power my phone, so I can talk to people or just get radio updates and things like that, that'll take care of it. That'll have lights. That'll get you through a lot of situations as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, like we said, I think we covered everything we needed to cover tonight. And I don't know if we have any last thoughts from the group before we adjourn.
I'll throw it to operator. He's got to go quick before all of us. So
No, I'll wrap. I'll say my piece here. No, thanks for having us on, Rick. But understanding for the audience here, self-defense is a right. It's a great right. For us Catholics, it's in our catechism, right? Love towards oneself remains a fundamental principle of morality. It's legitimate to respect your own life, and it's legitimate to defend those who you're responsible for and the lives of others, right? We have a duty and obligation to be stewards, whatever our role is in life. If you're a husband, it's to your wife. If you're a father, it's to your children. And making sure that you live in a good Catholic moral life, and you're understanding that self-defense doesn't always mean use of force. It can mean de-escalation. It can mean conflict avoidance. All these things, just take those into account when you're dealing with very high stressful situations, and remain upright and moral in the eyes of God. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Yeah, guys. Again, don't go out looking for trouble. Don't do that. Don't incite a road rage incident just so you can pull your gun. I know we're all Catholic here, but it just goes to say, everybody has a bad day every now and again. Don't let your emotions get the best of you. Being a good man, a just man, you have to keep your emotions in check. Make good decisions, carry yourself carry yourself with dignity, be confident in what you do. If you having to walk down the street late at night with your wife, carry yourself with confidence. Confidence goes a long way when dealing with potential threats, and somebody's always looking for a victim. If you carry yourself with confidence and you look like you might mean business, it happens to me all the time. I walk in my neighborhood late at night, and women will see me walking down the road there, and they cross the street. It's a great tactic. I'm a big guy, big beard, late at night. That's a great tactic. Be aware of your surroundings, and just be smart, guys. Be smart.
Phoebe at the last second wants to throw in a question here. It's not silly. I don't think it's silly at all. I don't have a specific recommendation for pepper spray, Phoebe. What I can tell you is if you do decide to carry a form of pepper spray, there are classes that actually teach you how to use it, because a lot of people don't, and then they don't know. Depends on like if you get the spray. If you're doing it downwind, it's going to do more damage to you than to the other person. If you're going to use the gel, you have to make sure you get the eyes, and things like that. So
aim above the eyes. That way it drips down. Yep.
So I
can
don't know
put
if you guys have anything specific, Angel.
Yeah, Saber Red. It's like the law enforcement, like strong. I was actually looking into this like 2 days ago, and ordered some. Ironically, and I got Saber Red. I did not get the gel. I just got the regular stuff to keep in my car.
Yeah, they even come with a visor clip, so you can keep it on your visor, right above your head. So yeah, definitely, Phoebe, look into those, because I actually looked and recommended those for a friend of mine as well. That's a great one to do. Like I said, if you're worried about wind, the gel might be a good option for you. So just go keep do some research on whether the spray or the gel is going to work better for you. But the Saber Red, absolutely, that's a great recommendation.
Yeah, that's usually the industry standard. You're gonna find other ones that are out there, but Saber, as you can see, they're different sizes, they're different, as Joey just said, there's the clip right here, so you can keep that. So that's a great question, because there are some people, Phoebe, that are like, I'm not gonna carry a gun, but I want to have something. So, would pepper spray be a decent option? If it breaks, if the contact is made so you can get away, then that's what you need. You need to be able to actually get out of a situation, and pepper spray may be able to do that for you. So just be aware of how to use it, because there was a funny story. A lady used pepper spray, and actually sprayed back on her. And the police were asking her, and they're like, "Where did you get your training for the pepper spray?" She goes, "I got it at Academy." And he goes, yeah, that's great. But where did you get the training for? She goes, I got it at Academy. And so they just weren't, they weren't gelling on that one. Pardon the pun. But that's definitely something to take a look at. And pepper spray is very inexpensive. You can get something like this for 14, 19, 22. You just take a look at it there, and know, just like with a firearm or with a knife or anything else we talk about, just know how to use the object that you are planning to employ. That's really the biggest thing. It's like I tell people, whether it's gear, knives, guns, whatever, just know how to use it, because the time you want to use it is not the time to figure out how it works.
Yep, absolutely. There's some good lanyard style karambit knives. It actually goes through your hand, so it's harder to get out of your hand. That's something you could always look at as well. It's like I said, it goes around your neck, hangs down into a little sheath. You could pull it out and get to work if you have to.
Yep. Yeah. There's so many different kinds of pepper sprays and stuff like that. Well, Bellator, there's the idea that if a criminal's been hit with it enough times, I'm not saying they have an immunity to it, but it doesn't impact them as much. But I'd rather take my chance, and be like, excuse me, sir, have you been pepper sprayed before? I don't think you want to be asking that question. You kind of want to just hit them with it and let the chips fall as they may. I've never heard of them using it for their food, but I know if they've been through the system enough time, they've been hit with it. So
spray first, ask questions later.
Yeah, in that regard. So it's definitely something. I mean, it's an interesting point you bring up, Bellator, but I don't really know much about that. But I would agree with that. Spray and get away, because all you're looking for even like a second where they're looking down or they're distracted, and you just go. Right, the best thing you can do in any situation, whether it's firearms, Angel's example. Get out, just get away from the situation as soon as possible. If you can get to your car, lock the doors, get out of there. That is the optimum thing we're looking for, because the longer we're engaged in a physical situation, especially for women, the chances of it being a positive outcome for you are going to go down. Not because I'm a misogynist, but because I'm a realist. It doesn't matter how much Brazilian jiu-jitsu training or judo or whatever thing like that. Those are fun for the movies, but 120-pound girl trying to like judo kick. I'm 215 pounds, right? My joke is I'm a fat old guy with a blown knee, and I'm pretty sure if like Juno girl comes up to me, I'm gonna be like, "This is cute. What are you doing?" And it's I'm like, I have a wife. What are we doing here? So it's just one of these things. Like you don't want to be in that situation for as long as you can be. You want to get out as soon as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be a great topic for a future show, is for doing a show for the ladies out there to give you some practical tips of, what to do in a kidnapping scenario, what to do in an assault scenario. And that's something we should definitely write down on our list of topics for future shows.
Writing it down right now. ladies night.
And ladies, all you ladies that are watching right now, if you're married, get your husband have him tune into the show, man. This is a great show where, again, we're just trying to, we've been around, all of us guys, we've been around for a hot minute. We're like the uncles. I was talking to a friend not long ago. We're like the old uncles in the backyard that everybody goes to for advice. We kind of tend to stick to ourselves. We're like those old uncles that you can kind of go to. We just want to bestow the knowledge that we have and pass it down to a new generation. And all you young guys out there, step up. It's time to step up. Don't wait on us to be 65 and then try and fill our shoes. You need to be learning from us and learning on the job. We have a lot of knowledge to bestow on people, and a lot of experience. But amongst all of us, we have a lot of experience. Learn from us now and start applying it now, because that is as the more you train and the more you practice what we've been trying to teach you guys, it's going to become more natural and to become second nature to you. It's just like, if you eat healthy every day, great. Well, this needs to become you're eating healthy, but for self-defense and prepping and, church safety and things like that. You need to practice it in order to perfect it.
Absolutely.
Phoebe, send us some more show ideas. Put them in the chat. We'll write them down.
Please. Or if you have, if you think of them after the show, I think we talk on, you can send me an email, barrettbrief@gmail.com. Joey's on X, Angel's on X. Just be like, hey, I saw, this is Phoebe from the show. I have an idea for this. And you know what we're going to say? That's awesome. And we're going to write that down.
Yeah. I'm on pretty much all the social media, all the major ones. So just track me down on there. Send me your friend request. I'm available. I'm retired. So,
so just as a housekeeping for next weekend or next week's show, I'm going to be in Houston. So I'm not going to have all this stuff around me. Angel is going to run the show from his YouTube page, Catholic Preppers United. We'll make announcements throughout the week. And so the show next week will actually be there. I'm actually interested to see. I think YouTube just doesn't like me, so it suppresses the show. I want to see if we get a little bit more of a reach with going on Angels. I think we actually might get a bigger sample size on there. But so tune in. Show will be 7 p.m. Central next week, but it's going to be on Catholic Preppers United channel. Just stay tuned to all our socials and stuff for details, and we will let you all know. We are now adjourning this the fourth Council of St. Michael. We want to thank everybody in the chat for your questions, your suggestions. You guys really, we can't tell you enough. The suggestions, the comments and stuff, that's what we have ideas for the show, but we really, as you can tell, we enjoy actually answering the questions and kind of going back and forth with you guys. So send them in, send them to us during the week or whatever the case may be, and we'll love to talk about that. We will talk to you all next week. God bless. Viva Cristo Rey.